You're lying in bed and your brain won't stop. The meeting from this morning is still running on loop. The thing you should have said, the thing you did say, the message you haven't answered, the list for tomorrow that keeps growing in the dark. You're physically exhausted and mentally nowhere close to done. That's not a sleep problem. That's a transition problem. And the Stoics, people who dealt with war, plague, betrayal, and the weight of running an empire, figured out a sequence for it 2,000 years ago that still works tonight. 7 habits. 1 for each stage of the evening. Not a rigid routine you'll abandon in a week. A framework you can actually use. Starting tonight, in whatever order makes sense for where you are right now. Stick around for the 4th one. Most people have heard of the technique, but almost nobody uses it the way it was actually designed. It changes how anxiety works in the hours before sleep, and once you understand the mechanics, you'll see why. If this is the kind of content that actually lands for you, subscribe before we get into it. I put this out every week, and the next video connects directly to what we're building here. The first move of the evening isn't a thought exercise. It's physical, and it has to happen about 60 minutes before you want to be asleep. Turn off the screens, all of them. Phone face down, laptop closed, television off. Not because blue light is bad for melatonin, though it is, but because of what the content is doing to your nervous system. Every notification, every headline, every scroll is a new input asking your brain to evaluate, react, form an opinion, stay alert. You're feeding the exact mechanism you're trying to shut down and calling it relaxing. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the practice of withdrawing into yourself, retreating from the noise of the world and into the interior space where you actually have some control. He wasn't describing a philosophy in those moments. He was describing a nightly practice. The Emperor of Rome, at the end of days that made your worst week look mild, deliberately stepped back from the world before sleep. Not because he was hiding from it, because he understood that you cannot think clearly about your life while you're still being bombarded by it. The 60-minute window isn't arbitrary. It's roughly the time it takes for an activated nervous system to begin genuinely downshifting, when you stop feeding it stimulation. You're not waiting for sleep, you're creating the conditions for it. The screen going dark is the signal. Everything after that is the descent. You'll notice something the first few times you do this. The anxiety doesn't disappear immediately. It might actually feel louder for the first 10 minutes without a screen to absorb your attention. That's not a sign it's not working. That's the noise that was always there. Finally audible now that you're not drowning it out. Let it surface. You're about to deal with it. The second habit is where Seneca earns his place in this conversation. Seneca had a practice he described in his letters, sitting with the day before sleep and reviewing it honestly, not to punish himself, not to spiral, to look at it the way a fair witness looks at evidence. Clearly, without adding charge to the facts. Get a notebook, physical, not on your phone. 3 questions written by hand every night. First, where did I fall short today? Not to feel bad about it, to name it specifically enough that you can do something different tomorrow. A mistake you can't articulate clearly enough to write down is a mistake you haven't actually processed, and an unprocessed mistake tends to repeat. Second question, what did I actually do well? This one is harder than it sounds. Most people who are wired toward self-improvement are very good at cataloging their failures and genuinely bad at registering their wins. Seneca understood that virtue, the actual practice of living well, needs to be reinforced, not just corrected. If you did something right today and you don't name it, you're training yourself to see your life as an unbroken sequence of things to fix. That's not accuracy. That's a distortion. Third, what would I do differently? This is the bridge between the first 2 questions, not self-criticism, adjustment. The surgeon who reviews a difficult procedure isn't torturing himself. He's building better judgment for next time. That's all this is. 5 minutes, maybe 10 if the day was complicated. The act of writing, rather than just thinking, matters here. Something about the physical act of putting words on a page forces a level of specificity that mental review rarely achieves. You can't be vague with a pen in your hand the way you can be vague inside your own head. When you close the notebook, that's an intentional act. The day is reviewed. It doesn't need to keep running. You've looked at it clearly, taken what's useful, and you're setting it down. That gesture, closing the notebook, is small and it's real. The brain responds to ritual more than we usually give it credit for. The third habit is about tomorrow, but not in the way most evening planning works. Most people end their day by making a list of everything they need to do tomorrow, and then they lie awake thinking about the list. The list grows. Anxiety about the items on the list generates more items. By the time they fall asleep, they've essentially scheduled a small crisis for 7 a.m. The Stoic version is different. You're not just listing what needs to happen. You're separating what you control from what you don't, before the anxiety has a chance to blur that line. Take your 3 most important tasks for tomorrow. Write each one down. Then next to each task, note specifically what part of it is actually in your hands. Your preparation, your focus, your effort, your attitude in the room. Then acknowledge what isn't. The outcome, other people's reactions, circumstances you can't predict. This isn't resignation, it's precision. The anxiety that keeps people awake at night is almost never about the task itself. It's about conflating the task with the outcome. You're lying awake, worried about whether the presentation will go well, whether the conversation will land, whether the decision will be approved. None of those outcomes are entirely yours, but your preparation, completely yours. Your clarity in the room, yours. How you handle it if something goes sideways, still yours. When you draw that line cleanly before sleep, you're not going to bed anxious about things outside your control. You're going to bed clear about what you're responsible for and settled about everything else. That's a different nervous system state entirely. The list doesn't grow in the dark when you've already separated what's real from what's imaginary. Worry. Epictetus built his entire philosophy on this distinction, and he arrived at it not through privilege, but through having almost nothing else left. When you strip away everything external, status, comfort, the ability to control your own circumstances, what remains is still this: the choice of how you meet what comes. That's the territory you're protecting with this habit. Small as the exercise looks on paper, it's the same ground he was standing on. The fourth habit is the one most people misuse, and the misuse is why it doesn't work for them. Premeditatio malorum. The premeditation of difficulty gets taught as a kind of defensive pessimism. Imagine bad things so you're not surprised by them. That framing makes it sound like anxious rehearsal, which is the opposite of what it actually is. Here's the real version. Before sleep, you think of one specific challenge that's likely tomorrow. One, not a list, not your 5 biggest fears. One concrete, probable thing. A difficult conversation you've been avoiding. A meeting where the dynamic is tense. A task you've been putting off because it makes you uncomfortable. You hold it clearly in your mind, and then you imagine yourself meeting it. Not triumphantly, not perfectly, just with your values intact. Calmly, the way you'd want to be in that moment if someone were watching you. At your best, you see yourself in the room, in the conversation, at the desk. You feel the discomfort of it, and you watch yourself stay grounded inside it. That's the mechanism. It's not about predicting outcomes, it's about rehearsing your own character under pressure. The brain doesn't fully distinguish between a vivid mental rehearsal and a lived experience. Athletes have known this for decades. What you're doing here is meeting the difficult moment in advance with a calm mind, before the adrenaline of the actual situation narrows your thinking. When the moment arrives tomorrow, something in you will recognize it, not with dread, but with a strange familiarity. You've been here before, in a way. And that fraction of recognition, that slight reduction in surprise, is enough to give you the space you need to choose your response rather than just react. Marcus Aurelius did this. He writes in the Meditations about waking each morning and reminding himself that he would encounter difficult people, ingratitude, stupidity, cruelty, not because he was bracing for the worst, because he had already decided how he would meet it. The decision was made in the quiet before the storm arrived. By the time the storm came, there was nothing left to decide. The fifth habit is the shortest one to describe, and the one that compounds the most over time. One page, a single page from a Stoic text, the Meditations, the discourses of Epictetus, the letters of Seneca. Not a chapter, not a reading session. One page, read slowly before you sleep. The specific effect this has is hard to explain until you've done it consistently for a few weeks. What you're doing is placing a seed, one clear thought, one well-articulated principle, one honest observation about how to live right at the threshold of sleep. The mind doesn't fully shut down when you sleep. It processes, it sorts, it consolidates, and what you feed it last has a quiet influence on that process. This isn't mystical, it's just sequencing. You're choosing what gets the last word in your mind before sleep takes over, rather than leaving it to whatever you happen to scroll past an hour before. Over weeks, you'll find certain passages returning to you at unexpected moments. In the middle of a difficult conversation, right before a decision that matters. Not because you memorized them, because they were planted repeatedly, at the right time, in the right conditions. One page, it takes 4 minutes. The investment is so small that failing to make it is actually harder than making it. Once it's a habit, start tonight with whatever you have. If you don't have a Stoic text, the Meditations is available free online in multiple translations. Marcus Aurelius wrote it for himself. It reads that way, like someone working something out, night after night, in the quiet, at the end of hard days. That's exactly the energy you want in your last 4 minutes of reading. The sixth habit sounds the simplest and carries the most weight proportionally. Before you lie down, or right after, with your eyes closed, you expand your frame. You picture where you are right now, your room, your building, your street. Then wider, your city, the country, the continent, the planet from above, that pale image we've all seen from space. Then the solar system, a small arrangement of rocks and gas orbiting an average star in the outer arm of one galaxy among hundreds of billions. Your meeting is down there somewhere. The thing someone said to you, the bill you're worried about, the relationship that's fraying, still real, still yours to deal with, but now you're looking at it from a different altitude, and from this altitude, the proportions change. This practice has a name in Stoic writing, the view from above. Marcus Aurelius returned to it constantly, not to dismiss his problems, not to tell himself nothing matters, but to recalibrate, to interrupt the tunnel vision that hard days create, where the thing in front of you fills your entire field of view and feels total, feels permanent, feels like the whole picture. It isn't. It never is. And the moment you can actually feel that, not just know it intellectually, but feel it, the way you feel it when you stand at the edge of a canyon or look at the ocean at night, the body releases something, a tightening that you didn't even realize was there. It's not relief through avoidance, it's relief through accurate proportion, things returning to their actual size. 30 seconds, eyes closed. Zoom out. That's the whole habit. The simplest thing on this list and the one that most directly addresses the physical tension that makes sleep hard to find. The last habit is the one that closes the evening, and it's less a practice than a decision. When your head hits the pillow, you make a statement to yourself. Out loud, if you can, even quietly, something like this. I did what I could with what I had today. It's done. That's it. No performance, no affirmation script, no elaborate ritual, just an honest acknowledgement that the day is finished and that you met it as well as you were capable of meeting it. Not perfectly. Nobody meets any day perfectly, but with the effort and intention you had available. The Stoics called this amor fati, love of fate. Not passive acceptance, not indifference, a genuine embrace of the day as it was, including the hard parts, including the things that didn't go the way you wanted, including your own moments of falling short. All of it as part of the material your life is made of, none of it wasted, none of it evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with you or your life. Epictetus lost everything before he was old enough to choose anything, and what he arrived at, what he spent the rest of his life articulating in rooms full of students, was that the day you live fully, with your values intact, trying to meet what comes with the best version of yourself available, that day is complete. That day doesn't need to have been easy or successful or recognized by anyone. It just needs to have been honestly lived. That's what you're affirming when the lights go out. Not that it was a good day, not that everything went well, that you were in it, doing what you could, being who you're trying to become, and now it's over, and tomorrow is its own thing entirely. And right now, in this specific moment, there's nothing left to do. Close your eyes. The day is done. Let it go. The statement itself is short. The practice behind it runs deeper than it sounds. Because here's what most people actually do when they lie down at night. They audit. Not consciously, not with any structure, just a low-level, constant running assessment of everything that went wrong. Everything that's unresolved, everything that's coming. The mind doesn't naturally stop when the body does. It keeps going, chewing on the same material it's been chewing on all day, because nobody told it the day was finished. That's the thing amor fati actually addresses. Not just the big events, the failures, the losses, the disappointments that take real time to process, the small daily residue, the accumulation of minor frustrations, incomplete thoughts, interactions that ended ambiguously, decisions you made that you're not entirely sure about. That residue doesn't announce itself. It just quietly runs in the background, burning energy you need for sleep, keeping a low hum of unease active when everything else has gone quiet. The declaration, I did what I could, with what I had today, it's done, is not a thought. It's a closing, a deliberate act of completion, and completion matters to the brain in ways that are very concrete and very measurable. The Zeigarnik effect, the well-documented tendency of the mind to keep returning to unfinished things, runs constantly, automatically, without your permission. Unresolved loops stay open. They demand attention. They interrupt sleep because the brain genuinely cannot tell the difference between a task that's unfinished because you haven't gotten to it yet, and a task that's unfinished because it's simply over for today. You have to tell it out loud, quietly, to yourself, the day is closed. That might sound too simple to actually work. It isn't. The act of stating something that your mind has been avoiding stating, the day is over, I'm not going to solve this tonight, whatever happened happened, interrupts the loop, not by resolving the content of the loop, by removing the premise it runs on, the premise that something can still be done right now, that reviewing it one more time might produce something useful, that staying awake with it is somehow more responsible than letting it go until morning. It isn't. Nothing productive happens to most problems between midnight and 6 a.m. that couldn't happen better at 9 a.m. with a clear head and a rested body. The review you're doing in the dark is not insight. It's the same content cycling through the same tired circuits, producing the same anxiety it produced the last 3 times around. The loop is not helping you, it's just using you. Amor fati breaks it. not by pretending the problems don't exist. They do. They'll be there in the morning. You'll deal with them. But by genuinely accepting, at the level where acceptance actually changes something, that tonight they are not yours to carry. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that I keep returning to when this particular idea comes up. He wrote about the practice of dying to each day, not morbidly, not dramatically, but as a literal letting go. The Stoics had an unusual relationship with the concept of death, precisely because they thought about it so regularly that it lost most of its charge. And one of the things they noticed, thinking about it clearly over time, is that each day is already a small version of the same thing. It begins, it runs, it ends, and whatever you are holding at the end of it goes with it into the dark.